Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Journey into XR. My name is April Spate, and I am a Senior Cloud Advocate here at Microsoft. I joined the Mixed Reality team as well as Microsoft Reactor to bring you all this 10-part series to help you get started with your journey into XR development. We have a very exciting episode today because we are finally going to dive into Unity and also take a look at some code. Before we get started, however, I will say that all previous videos are available for view by navigating to YouTube. You can go to aka.ms/mr-videos, and that's where you can find all of our past recorded sessions as well as many more mixed reality videos. Today we're going to be talking about how you can enhance your XR experiences with Azure services. Provided here on the screen are a variety of the Azure services that we have available here at Microsoft that you can add into your own projects. Today, I'm going to only focus on two, the first one being text-to-speech as well as the second one being speech translation. These are both part of our Azure Speech services within Cognitive Services. These two services are my most favorite ones to use, so without further ado, let's go ahead and head over to Unity and get started. All right, so we are here in Unity and we're going to go ahead and get started. First, we want to ensure that we have the correct capabilities. So coming to Edit, Project Settings, and then Player Settings, that's where we're going to be able to find the capabilities. There's four that we need to make sure that we have. The first one being the Internet Client. So the Internet Client is going to enable the app to receive incoming data from the Internet. Next is going to be the Internet Client Server. So that one's going to be like the Internet Client, but it's also going to enable peer-to-peer scenarios where the app needs to listen for incoming network connections. The next one that we'll need is going to be the Private Network Client Server. So that provides inbound and outbound access to home and work networks through the firewall. And then the final one, let's see where it has ran off to, is the microphone. So the microphone is going to be able to access the microphone's audio feed, and that's going to allow the app to record audio from a connected microphone. Since I'm going to be using a HoloLens 2, there is a microphone built into the device, so pending user permission, I'll be able to utilize that microphone to receive utterances. So now that we have that, the next thing that we want to make sure we have set up are going to be the packages that need to be imported. So starting off with, let's see, Mixed Reality Toolkit. So I'm using the Mixed Reality Toolkit for my particular project, and that's where it's going to give me the different controls that I'm going to need as I am creating the buttons, for example. The next thing that's going to need to be imported is going to be the Text Mesh Pro Essentials, and so that's going to be the TMP Essentials. It's necessary for the UI that we're using with the Mixed Reality Toolkit. And then the final thing that needs to be imported is going to be the Cognitive Services Speech package for Unity. So I'm going to show you where you can find that. So we have that available within our quick start for setting up the development environment for the Speech SDK. If you happen to select on the Unity tab for the target environment and scroll down, where we have installed the Speech SDK, that's where you can find the Speech SDK for Unity, and it'll automatically start that download for you. Now heading back into Unity, we're going to do some scene setup. So far what I have is the wall as well as a ground. I'm going to start off by adding in some materials to those. And so this is just a nice review for those who may already be familiar with Unity, or in case you're just curious as to how the scene's going to be set up. So I have some textures or materials that I've created, and I actually created them using some textures that are available within this website that's called Polyhaven. So Polyhaven provides some, it's a public 3D asset library, and there are some textures here that you can browse and download. I personally like using this site because it's a really good collection of textures that are available for when you're creating your materials in Unity. So heading back to Unity, I have three. I have a beige, I have a brick, and then I have some wood planks. For this wall that I have back here, I'm going to drag the brick on top of that. So that gives us now our brick wall. And then for my ground, I'm going to drag this wood planks. And so it's going to create this gray wood plank. So if I change the view there and scroll in, it literally looks like wood, which is great. So since I'm trying this out here in my home, I'm going to be able to have this display against one of my walls, and it'll kind of look like an exhibit. The next thing that we're going to do is bring in the actual astronaut model. So I am going to be utilizing a model of Neil Armstrong's spacesuit. Now, where did I actually find that? Well, I've been using the Smithsonian 3D digitization platform for the past couple of years since they came out, or at least since I discovered that they have this collection of 3D assets from the museum. As someone native to the Washington, D.C. area, I grew up going to the Smithsonian museums, and so the Air and Space Museum happens to be a favorite of mine. Lucky for me, they actually have some 3D models here from the Apollo 11 mission, and so for this one, it's Neil Armstrong's spacesuit. These are available for public, and you can download them, and that's what I did. So coming back into Unity, I do have it here within my spacesuits section, and I'm going to just go ahead and create a new empty parent. Oops, not there. Let's undo that. And then within my exhibit, I'm going to now create empty. There we go. I'm going to just call that astronaut, and just going to go ahead and start dragging all these into this particular folder, and we're going to adjust everything about that here in a second. So you may start to notice that the astronaut's coming in at a very interesting size. If I scroll out, it's pretty large. So if I take everything here, but since everything's in this parent object, I can go ahead and change the scale size. So let's drop that down to 0.05. And let's see, I don't think that made a big difference. Let's try a little smaller. So we're almost there. He's pretty large. We may need to go just even a bit more. Let's add another 0 there. And now he's super teeny tiny. Oh, wait, I had a typo. I got rid of it. So just keep playing with this until we have a decent size. So he's pretty much there. I'm going to rotate him on the y-axis, so that'll be 180. All right, so it seems to be that I have him at the right scale now. So the next thing I'm going to do is just move him right on over here, out my way. Select him again, move him on the x-axis to the left. All right, so we have the scene almost put together. The next thing that we need to do is create it to look like an exhibit. So at museums, that's typically where you're going to find a sign of some sort next to what is on display. So within exhibit, I'm going to go ahead and using a primitive, I'm going to select a quad, bring that up. This is going to represent our sign, and I'm going to go ahead and rescale that so it's just a little wider. And then once I have that, I think that looks pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is add in a material for this. I'm using this beige. If I zoom in on that so you can get an idea of what this actually looks like, it's a little textured. So I personally like it. Now that we have that created, it's going to add in some text here. I'm going to add in a title as well as the year and then a description of what's going to be here. Now this description that's here is essentially what we are going to have the Azure text-to-speech say out loud on the button press. So what I'm going to do to create that here within Exhibit, I'm going to add in a Text Mesh Pro text object. Zooming on out here, I'm going to resize this because it is very large. Let's start at a 1. And then I'm going to change that color to be black so that way we can see it. And if I just resize the canvas there, I'm going to bring that over and bring it down so we can see it. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and zoom on that for us here in the scene view. And so to start off, I want this to say Neil Armstrong spacesuit. So there's our title. And then let me go ahead and rename what I have here. So this one, I'm going to rename this to be plaque. If I can spell plaque correctly, that is plaque. And then for the text, I have the title. And then after that, I'm going to duplicate this title so I don't have to create it again from scratch. So doing Control D, this one's going to be the year. And then I'm going to duplicate it one more time, and that's going to give us the description. So if I type in description there. All right. So using my control first let's do the description down first. I'm gonna move that down. For the year, I'm gonna move that just below the title. I'm gonna fill that one in first. So the Apollo 11 mission took place in 1969. And then as for the description itself, I'm gonna copy in what I already have written, and might need to change the text for sure for this one. And let's make that as small as a 0.9. We might need to drop this down till we find a decent size. So let's break some of these lines here. And I think that'll give us what we want from a size perspective. So if I bump this font back up, there we go, it's legible. So this will be good for now. This is just a prototype, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So we have the scene that's set up and created now, and the next thing that we want to do is add in the buttons. So again, here in this exhibit, I'm going to create an empty game object called buttons, and we're going to use this to create the very first button, which is going to be for the English language. And so because I'm using Mixed Reality Toolkit, I'm going to use the pressable HoloLens buttons. If I switch this to all, I can find them. And here is one. So I turn that around. We have a button. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that into my buttons folder. And right now we can't see it. So if I scale it up by 10, it's going to be at a much better size now. And there we are. And I'm going to just slide that one on over. So for this one, I personally want to disable to see it say it label. And that's if I zoom in for you. That's going to be this label below that says say select. And so it's one of those, if you see it, you say it. And I'm going to disable that one. I am going to rename this English because I want this to be in English. And then I'm going to add in a hand icon here so that way it indicates that you are able to push this particular button. Now, I can also change the color of the background for these buttons as well. So within there, it's in the back plate in that quad. I'm going to use that same material from earlier for the plaque. So let me clear out the search terms here. And I'm going to use beige. I'm going to drag that onto this quad there, just like that. And now we have it. We have the entire button now background is going to be more of that beige color. And if I want, I can change the icon and the text. And so the text, I'm going to go ahead and make that black. And if I had a different icon, I could also switch that to one that's going to be black as well. But in any case, we have our button here. Now, the next thing that we can do is I'm going to rename this one English. So that way we know this is going to be the English button. And because this button's been configured, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. So duplicate 2 more times. One's going to be for Spanish. And then the next one's going to be for French. So now that we have those, I'm going to now use what's called the grid object collection. It's going to enable me to display these buttons in a grid at a specified distance from one another in a row. So if I click Add Component, this is with the Mixed Reality Toolkit, not object collection. There we go, grid object collection. Now that I have that selected, what I can do now is click Update Collection. And so right now it's doing them all vertically. We don't want vertically. Instead, we want it to be column then row. We want 3 columns, and let's go ahead and update that. So now we have the buttons in the right place. I think they're just a little too far away from each other. So I'm going to change the width to 0.3. Now that's a little too much. So we might end up switching back to 5. Oh, there we go. That's good. So we have the buttons now. I'm going to slide them over and I'm going to change what I have written for each button. So we have English as the first one, Spanish as the next one, and then French as the final one. So the buttons are all set. The scene has been created. This is again just a prototype, but it doesn't take much to set this scene up. So the next thing we're going to do now is getting to some scripting, but first what I need to do is add in an audio source because we're going to need to be able to play back what's being received. So I've added in that audio source object, just an object within the overall parent that I have here. So let's now create the script. I happen to already have it created, and we're going to take a look at what's happening in here. So selecting this English description script that I have, it's loading on my other screen. So bear with me for 1 second. Here we are. So here's the script. I'm going to share with you all what's happening in here just so you have an idea of the flow in case you decide to create this on your own. So starting off, I do have some variables, some public string variables actually, because what I'm going to do is for the public pressable HoloLens button 2 variable, that's what we're going to use to represent that button for each of the different languages. Then I have some string ones here. That's where we're going to be adding in our subscription key as well as the region or the location. And then heading down from here, we have a speech config we're going to create, an audio config we're going to create as well. We have an audio clip that we're also going to have, and that's going to play from that audio source. And then what we get back from Azure, we're going to save that as a file that's called Azure Speech Synth, and it's going to be a .wav file. Now in here, we have the English button click function. And so let's go through what's happening in here. The first thing that we're going to do is create an instance of the speech config. So what that's going to do is take 2 parameters. One's going to be their subscription key, and then the other is going to be the region. And so from that Azure resource that was created, that's where those 2 are going to come in handy. The next thing we have is going to be a speech synthesis language, and so that's going to use the English locale. Now there are various different locales that you can go with, and we have a language support page that provides all that information there for you for whether it's speech to text or text to speech. In this case, we are using the text to speech. And so depending on the language that you're interested in, you would come and find the locale. And we also have some neural voices that you can also implement as well. And so if I go to the one for English, it's a couple of different versions of English here. And I want the one that's here from the US. So scrolling down here, we have some different options available. I tend to go with Jenny, and that's the one that we will be trying out later. So in either case, just ensure that you have the correct language locale set up. Then below there, what we're going to do is create that audio config, and it's going to be a WAV file that's going to be outputted. Then from there, the next thing that we have is the speech synthesizer. And so this is going to do speech synthesis to either a speaker, a file, or another audio output stream. And it gets synthesized, it gets a synthesized audio as a result. And so this speak text async here, this is going to synthesize speech from the plain text synchronously, and return when done synthesizing. So what I have written here is the same thing that's on the wall, that this spacesuit was worn by astronaut Neil Armstrong, commander of the Apollo 11 mission, which landed the first man on the moon on July 20th, 1969. So when we press the button, this text is going to be sent to Azure. Azure is going to return to us this WAV file. This WAV file is going to output. And so once we receive that, as I mentioned, we're going to get that back, literally what I just said here for the audio clip, and then we're going to use a play one shot, and it'll play it just once. And so that is essentially what we are doing here in this script. The last thing is just going to be here in the start method. And so this is going to be adding in a listener. So it'll be checking whether that English button has been clicked. So that would be the overall function that we just went through. Heading back here into Unity, let's now actually add this button to something. So the first thing that I need to do, I'm just going to add this here as a empty game object. This one is going to be English description. I'm going to go ahead and drag that script onto it. And so here we have it. The first thing I need to do is drag the button into the info button. And then for the subscription as well as the location, I'm going to use the one that I set up already. And then for the region, it's going to be West US 2. case you're curious, that service no longer exists, so if you do happen to input that subscription key, it's not going to work for you. For the audio source, I created that earlier, so we're going to drag that in there, and then the generated file, again, is Azure Speech Synths.wave. So now that that's been configured and set up, I believe that if we go ahead and try this out, we will hear what was said here, but put back out to us. So let's give that a try. All right, so because I'm using MRTK, I can do some simulation here in the game view. Use my spacebar to bring my finger up, and let's see if this works.
This spacesuit was worn by astronaut Neil Armstrong, commander of the Apollo 11 mission, which landed the first man on the moon on July 20th, 1969.
All right, perfect. So that worked well. And if you're curious to see what it's like in another language, I am going to go ahead and add one in here for you all for French. Come out of play mode, Unity. It's just taking a little bit to do that. Okay, so again with here, oops, I went back into play mode. 1 second. Okay, so in here, I'm gonna create another empty one for French description. If you're trying this out on your own at home, I definitely advise maybe organizing this just a little better. In any case, I'm gonna drag that here. I'm gonna set this up accordingly, dragging in my French button. I'm gonna paste back in my subscription key. My region is West US 2, this audio source, and then let's go ahead and give it a try for French. All right, so let's zoom in here with the W key, move over to the right with the D key, bring my hand up using the space, and here we goes nothing.
Cette combinaison spatiale a été portée par l'astronaute Neil Armstrong, commandant de la mission Apollo 11, qui a fait atterrir le premier homme sur la Lune le 20 juillet 1969.
Perfect. So that's set up correctly and it works. The next thing that I want to do now is add in the ability to do some speech translation. So imagine with me here for a second. You have this museum exhibit, and let's say it's a multi-person virtual exhibit. And let's say that the person that's given a tour, they speak one language, but someone that's there participating, maybe they don't share the same native language. So what we can do then instead is create this slate that I'm going to create in the scene that you can grab. And then as the person's speaking in one language, the translation will appear on that slate. So it's kind of almost like having captions. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to create that. I'm going to start off with, let's repurpose what we created already for this wall that's up here. So let's, no, you know what? I'm going to start. No, yes, I am going to do that. Couldn't decide for a second. So let's duplicate you, and I'm going to call you translation. I'm going to drag you over to the right a bit. Let's bring you up on the Z axis so that way when I go to do this later in my device, I can actually grab it. So with that said, let's actually create an empty one for that. Let's call this translation, and then we're going to drag in this quad in here. So there we go. And pull that over for myself, and I'm going to just scale it maybe to be this size. Maybe it needs to be smaller. We'll see when we go to test it out. Maybe come over a little bit. So in any case, I am now going to add in some text. So I'm going to repurpose what we already had for the text earlier so we don't have to resize the canvas and such again. I'm going to grab that description one. So duplicate you. I'm going to put you into translation. And what I want to do for this one, I think it needs to also be moved up as well. So I have, you are at, okay. Let's see if we can copy and paste that as Z. So that way they are more or less in the same place. Yeah, all right, that works, beautiful. So let's move that on down. And then this is going to be where our translated text is. So I'm going to put translation there. Oh, no, let's name that something else. Can't have two things named the same. And so we can actually blank that one out because what's going to happen is what we receive back from Azure is going to be placed into there. So translated text is what I'm going to have here. I'm going to duplicate this because what I want to do from a testing perspective is ensure that what we're saying is actually what's being picked up. So I'm going to put a recognized here. And so this is what's going to be recognized. So here I'm going to add in recognized. And like I did before, I'm going to just move some things around. So recognize will be on top, and then translated text will be here at the bottom. And then from there, the next thing that I am going to be able to do is create a button. So again, using the pressable button HoloLens, and I'm going to drag this to there, resize this, maybe a 10 again, and then I'm going to copy in that distance so that way it's more or less similar with everything else. There we go. And we'll just go ahead and bring that up. I think it's a little too big, so let's drop it down to a 7. I think that's good. Let's do zoom in so we can see it a little more. Okay, so we have that button. I'm going to call this one a microphone, so that way we know that this is what someone would speak into. And I'm gonna zoom in on it one more time for you all. It's out of focus. And here I am going to change this to say microphone. And we have a microphone icon, so I'm gonna change it to that. Get rid of that see it, say it label again. And there we go. So this is more or less what this looks like. And so from here, what we can do, I'm just going to move this a little bit. I don't like where it's placed. Let's drop that right there. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to make sure we have enough space for everything. We'll start with something simple. So what I want to do now from here is go to a script that has been created for this, and I am going to just guide you through what's happening in there. So for the translation script, this one's going to be, I think it's a little bit longer than the last one that we just took a look at, but that's okay. So to start off, we have some variables here at the top. One is going to be the text that's recognized, and then we also have the translated text and the microphone button. So we just created those 3 things. We also then have some public strings. So again, our subscription key and the region. And then we also have these 2 private strings. One's going to be the string, the recognized string. That's what we're going to get back from Azure with regards to what's heard. And we're going to be able to place that as what's going to be the actual recognized text. And then likewise for the translated string. And then we also do have this Boolean here for whether the mic permission has been granted, because we should be creating apps that ask for permission to use microphones. The next thing that we have here before we start to get into a bit more of the fun is a thread locker object. So that's going to be created to synchronize access to data. So inside this button click method, this is where we're putting in all our fun. We're creating a speech translation config. So similar to the speech config from earlier, it's going to have our subscription key and the region. Then we have our speech recognition language. And so again, using those locales that I showed you before, I'm going to be using English as the speech that's recognized. So that's what the speaker's saying. And then the target language is going to be French in this case. I happen to be learning French. It's a favorite of mine. So that's what we're going to be using. Now, as we continue on down, what we have going on is that in this button click, we have 2 different objects that are going to be created to do speech translation. One is the speech translation config, and the other is the translation recognizer. So the speech translation config, as I shared, that's what's going to be for creating the actual object. And then below that, which we haven't gotten into yet, is going to be the translation recognizer. So the translation recognizer, it's going to do the speech recognition from either a microphone, a file, or another audio input stream, and then it's going to get translated. It's going to get a translated string as a result. And so what we're doing in here is that it's going to start the speech recognition and it'll return the speech translation. So once we've done that setup, as we continue on down, we'll do some checks to make sure that things are set up properly. And then I think, yeah, here we are within the start method. That's when we are going to first check that the mic permission has been granted, and then we have another listener that checks for that button click for that microphone. So this might be, let's see, that's 93 lines of code. This one is a little bit shorter. So yes, that's just a tad bit longer. So we have this script. Let's now go add it to our project. So within that, let's see, the translation parent object that we have here, we can go ahead and add in the script for translation. And then let's add in these different objects. So for the recognized text, we're going to add in that game object. Translation, we're going to add in the, let's see, oops, I had the wrong one. For the translation, we're going to add in that object. Oh wait, I mixed them up. Sorry about that. Recognized one first, translated second, and then we have the button for the microphone. And then for our subscription key, let me just grab that again. And for the region, we're going to do West US 2. All right, everyone, moment of truth, because now this is set up. The next thing we need to do is just try this out. So I'm going to press this microphone button here in the game view. I'm going to say hello, small phrase, and then we're going to be able to get a translation back from that. So let's go ahead and give that a try. Coming into play mode here. And because I am using MRTK, I'm going to be able to simulate everything using W to zoom in, D to go to the right. I'm going to back up with the S, bring my hand up with the space bar, and when I press the microphone, I'm going to say a word. Hello. And it works. So there we have it. That is a translation. Let's try something a little more difficult. Let's say today is Friday. Today is Friday. There we go. Aujourd'hui, c'est vendredi. Perfect. So we have now utilized 2 Azure services in our experience that we've created. And this is great. This is actually perfect. There's so much more that you can do with cloud services, whether you're using spatial anchors, remote rendering, you can do object detection, which is pretty cool. We've done some translation here today. You can also do some speech to text, text to speech. And bots. Also, bots are my absolute favorite. So as you are creating your own experiences, and whether you're using Mixed Reality Toolkit, as I've done today, or any other toolkit for your experience, do consider adding in some Azure cloud services, as they're really great to try out, and I think it's worth it. So that's all I have for you today as part of this Reactor series. Be sure to join us for the next one that's scheduled. And until then, you all take care and happy creating.